Auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Welcome back, students. Today we'll be starting our fifth module, which is developing research instruments and proving validity and reliability of our instruments. If you try to place it in the context, in the flow diagram that we are using for this entire course, we are doing the third big block of our flow diagram, which has two parts. One is develop / select instruments, and the second is prove instrument reliability and validity. Well, before I go on, I'd like to mention that this part that we'll study, it's not a big part. We should be able to complete it in one session, but it is perhaps the most important part of your research. Why? Because all that you've done so far, you've done a lot of brainstorming, you've come up with your research questions, which were initially only ideas. Then you broke your research questions into variables. Then you tried to develop measures for your variables, the hypothesis. Then you did your operational and conceptual definitions, and in the last session you went on to sampling, in which you did clustering methods and sample size, etc. So this was all a lot of technical stuff, but what you'll do today is converting all that technical stuff into 2 pages, so that your audience or your respondents, they give you the data that you require to conduct your research. So basically it will be a crystallization of all you've done into 2 pages. So in that way it becomes a very important part, because all your hard work, it will be a kind of shaped in a 2-page or 3-page or maybe 1-page questionnaire. So it will need a lot of skill, a lot of focus, and a lot of knowledge about your audience, so that you can make a good questionnaire and collect the kind of data that you want to collect, which will help you analyze all the variables and come up with your results of the research that can be later shared with the scientific community in the shape of a paper or any other presentation. So in a way, you will be building upon whatever you did in module 4 of our course. So it's a good time to review what we did in module 4. Basically, we did 3 set of activities. The first one was developing variables, or some basic relationship between variables from your ideas of research that you had. Then we tried to define our variables conceptually and operationally, so that we can come up with measures or indicators of those variables. Then we made decisions about the sampling that we have to do. So today we'll build upon all this and convert all our work into a single set of questions that we'll ask our respondents or audience. So the first part is developing the research question, or maybe not all of you would develop your research questions. Some of you may actually use research questions that were made by other researchers in their published research. So in that way, we'll be either choosing our research questionnaires or developing our research questionnaires. So the choosing part is easy. You can select any good research paper that did the same research that you are doing in some other place, in some other context, and use their questionnaire. So obviously we don't have to study anything about it. You just have to use that questionnaire. But if you want to develop your questionnaire, what are the steps that you have to take? That is what we are going to study. So there are some basic tips that you must remember before we go on to the actual development of questionnaire. The first and the most important is, do not try to reinvent the wheel. In all likelihood, whatever you are doing, unless it is an absolutely novel idea, it has been done by somebody else already in some shape, in some variant of your research. So try and find those researches that are similar to your research, or perhaps when you were doing your research literature review, you may have already come across such a research paper or a questionnaire that was used in that research paper. So take that research uh, questionnaire and see if that fits your research perfectly. In all likelihood, it will not fit your research perfectly. You may have to make some adjustment, but still a lot of work that you are supposed to do would have been done already by that research questionnaire. And a big advantage is that if you use a proven research questionnaire or instrument, you do not require to prove the validity and reliability of that questionnaire. But as I said, you will require to tweak it a bit. So you will then probably conduct a pilot study or a pre-test study to prove the reliability or validity. The second tip is keep it clear, short, and to the point, because people do not like answering very long questionnaires. They do not appreciate when they get winding and difficult to understand sentences, jargons, technical language. So try to make it as easy and as possible for your potential respondents. The next tip is that order of the questionnaire is important. Whatever information that you think is of the highest importance for you, extract it first, so that if there's a chance of the respondent getting bored during filling your questionnaire, he or she should have already given you the most important information. Then always proofread, because small errors in your questionnaire, they can actually mean that one question that you've written in some state of mind may mean something else to a respondent, and yet another it may mean yet another something to yet another respondent. So make sure you proofread it. You can ask the help of your friends who are good at language to proofread it for you. It's a good idea to include a title of your questionnaire, and then you have to make it look professional. How do you do it? Well, it's a matter of aesthetics, so perhaps everybody have their own ideas on that, but it should be giving a very good look to your audience or your respondents. So the basic idea of doing all this research through a research questionnaire is accomplishment of three goals. One is that your questionnaire should be measuring the underlying concept it is intending to measure. Secondly, it does not measure concepts that you are not interested in measuring, so no extra questions. And finally, it means the same thing to all the respondents. Different people do not extract different meanings out of your questions. So how do we achieve these three goals? There are many steps, but the first one, avoid technical terms and jargon. Basically, the words that you use in your questionnaire, they should be easily understood by anyone taking the survey. For example, do you support or oppose so and so reforms by the government? So unless everybody knows those reforms, they may not answer your question correctly. And if, for example, the reform was called a COVID-19 reform, maybe everybody doesn't know what COVID-19 is. So do not use any technical term. Use the terms that are known to your audience. Second, avoid vague or imprecise terms. As we said earlier, it is best to use terms that will mean the same to all the respondents. For example, it's not clear what you get when you ask this question. How important is it that a candidate shares your value system? Well, you might get very inconsistent answers, because every candidate will have a separate value system, and every individual will have a different value system, and Are you talking about the religious values or the social values or the cultural values? So you've really left it to the imagination of your respondents. So please make sure that everybody they understand the same thing and the language is precise. Then define things very specifically. What does that mean? Well, instead of asking, what is your income? Well, some people they may not know the exact meaning of income, so you may like to ask them uh, whether you want to know about the money that they get after taxes or before taxes. So the idea is to be specific. Then you have to avoid complex sentences. Do not use sentences that have too many clauses or unusual construction, because you're not here to like prove that you are very good at a particular language and you can use all those hyphens and colons and all that, the Oxford commas and all that. You have to be absolutely easy to understand and very clear. So do not use finding and long sentences with many clauses. Next, provide reference frames. So the idea is that if you ask questions how often do you feel sad? Well, some people might provide an answer about their life's experience, while others might only be thinking about today. So it's better to provide a reference frame by something like, how often have you felt sad during the past week? How good is the economy these days? So, how good is the economy in your community these days? So, the idea is to be specific about the frame that you're talking about. It could be the spatial frame, the spatial frame, or the time frame. So, be specific about the frame. Next is make sure that the scales are ordinal. We discussed it in the last week as well. If we say, how many jobs are available in your town? Many, a lot, some, a few. Now this is kind of confusing. Why? Because if you already have a job, you may like to think that many jobs are available. But if you're jobless, you would perhaps think that very few jobs are available. So it'll be better if you use ordinal scale for the questions wherever possible. Then you have to avoid double barrel questions. What does a double barrel question mean? The basic idea is that questions should be measuring only one thing. Double barrel questions basically try to measure two or more things at one time and through one sentence. For example, do you think the president should lower the taxes and spending, or the prime minister should lower the taxes and fuel prices? Respondent would think that the prime minister should do only one of these things, and others may think that he should do both of these things. So it is good to ask only one thing in one question. Then avoid questions using leading, emotional, or evocative language. For example, do you believe that Pakistan should immediately bring its troops back from Saudi Arabia? Now this is evocative because it might quickly charge the emotions of somebody if they have a strong political belief about the fact that Pakistan has some military presence in some areas in the world. Similarly, you should avoid questions that kind of prick into the political beliefs of a person or the religious beliefs of a person, or sometimes even the gender beliefs of a person. They are also very sensitive in nature. So try and avoid that. Then is answer choices should anticipate all possibilities. Now the idea is that if a respondent could have more than one response to a question, it is best to allow for multiple choices. If the categories you provide don't anticipate all possible choices, it is often a good idea to include an option called other. Please specify. So every respondent should have some option that he or she can choose. Then ask one question at a time. We've already discussed that, but the idea is that you should not be using long, winding, and double barrel questions. Avoid personal questions. We all understand what that is. Some people are, most of the people, they are not very comfortable answering questions about themselves that are personal in nature unless they see uh, some really useful outcome coming out of it, or uh, they are assured of the confidentiality concerns that they may have. So avoid personal questions if you cannot convince them about confidentiality or big benefits that they can get if they give you the personal information. And finally, include options such as I don't know or not applicable, because some respondents, they may have no idea at all about your question, so they should have this option of I don't know or it is not applicable to me. All right, so these were some basic tips. Now we'll go through the steps that are taken to make a questionnaire. Now this builds on what we've done already in module 4 so far. Actually, we've completed module 4, so whatever we've done in module 4, this builds on it. The first step is clearly identify the major areas you want to know about or you want to research. In terms of research and research methods, we call these areas constructs. Number 2, decide how many questions you will include in each construct. Now, every question is called an item. So for every construct, you will decide how many questions you want to ask. The idea is that you want to completely understand that construct. So there are some constructs that are very simple in nature and you might only ask a question or two about them. Other constructs, they may be very complex. For example, the emotional well-being of a person, it is pretty complex to grasp. So you may have to ask multiple questions from multiple perspectives to understand the emotional well-being of a person. Now, when you're doing this, it is actually a very good time to revisit the conceptual definitions you developed in module 4-2, which was actually lecture 6-2. So, because in the conceptual definitions, you have what you did was you outlined the idea behind the variable, the thought that you had behind that variable. So, if you revisit that, it will be easy for you to decide which questions you want to ask about this particular construct. And finally, when you've decided how many constructs you'll have and how many questions you'll have in each construct or items you'll have in each construct, you have to thoughtfully word or phrase each question. Now, the structure of your questionnaire, it can vary depending on your research, but a general structure should be something like this. You should, first of all, have a section that introduces you, obviously after the title of your questionnaire. Then you have to explain why you are sending this questionnaire to that particular respondent, or maybe generally to respondents. Then you have to clearly reveal what will happen to the data that you collect. Then you have to tell them how long will it take to fill this questionnaire. Then you will have to tell them if you are offering any incentives to them if they fill your questionnaire. Once you've done all these 5 steps, then you will insert your main questionnaire, which will be construct wise. First construct and all its items, then second construct with all its items, and so on. And finally, you will thank the respondents. Now, in introducing yourself, it is a good idea if you include your credentials as well, because that might convince the respondent to respond. Why are you giving the purpose of the questionnaire? Because many people, they don't reply unless they know what goals would be achieved by your questionnaire. At the end of this session, when we do our learning extension and we do the example, I'll clarify it a bit further. Why do you want to tell them what will happen with your data? Because people, they are concerned about their privacy, the transparency of how you do, and um, the, the concerns of their personal information. Why do you want to tell them how long will it take? Because you want to assure them that it's not a cumbersome thing to do. It is a smart questionnaire which won't take too long. Because just imagine you yourself being a respondent and getting a questionnaire which says this will take like 3 hours to fill. Obviously, even if you're a very good respondent, you'll probably put it in your waiting list. So tell them how long will it take and make sure it doesn't take too long. And about the incentives, well, uh, uh, obviously everybody, they cannot give incentives for filling questionnaires, but the least incentive that you can give to your respondents is that you tell them that you'll share a copy of your research with them, or your research paper with them. Or perhaps you can tell them that you'll mention them in the credits of your paper and send them a copy to evaluate, or feel good about it. So everybody can at least give these two incentives to their respondents. Now, this was the part of developing the questionnaire. There's nothing too technical about it. Why? Because we've already done a lot of hard work from developing our research questions, then focusing the research questions, then we dug into variables, we then identified the measurable variables, then we uh, developed measures for each variable, then we decided what kind of questions, or what kind of uh, scales we will use for a particular variable. Um, then we kind of decided multiple variables, multiple measures for each variable. So we have already have a very clear idea of our questions. So this session was basically to put it in a frame. If you remember our exercise, our learning extension that we did for the course example, I outlined 15 potential questions that could be asked. So that was kind of a very rough draft of our first draft of our questionnaire. With what I explained today, the idea is to crystallize or clarify that draft, put it into a more acceptable shape, in a more aesthetic shape, and fit it into the overall questionnaire, which has many other sections as well. So what we'll do now is we'll quickly look at the validity and reliability part of a questionnaire, and then we'll move on to course learning, or the extension of our learning through course example. Well, validity and reliability basically are both very important criteria for analyzing the quality of your questionnaire or measure, or your research instrument or research tool, whatever word you're using. Uh, well, uh, Basically, they are both very independent, but they are pretty related as well. Uh, a measurement procedure or a questionnaire, it cannot be valid unless it is reliable, but it can actually be reliable without being valid. For example, um, if I measure the height of my respondents and I say that I'm measuring their intelligence, uh, they would get consistent and reliable results, because every time I measure the height, I'll get the same height. But this won't be valid, because height is not an indicator of intelligence. So reliable, yes. Why? Because it does the same thing always. It's very reliable. But valid? No, absolutely not, because it is not measuring what it is designed to measure. So that brings us to the definitions of reliability and validity. What is reliability? It is examining whether you are getting consistent information or not. Consistent can mean multiple things, but basically it reflects whether if you do multiple versions of your your data collection, will you get the same data every time? If yes, then you are reliable. What is validity? It is whether the information you are getting measures what you think it measures. So if I want to measure intelligence, my questionnaire should not be measuring heights and weights and stuff. It should be measuring intelligence only. That is validity. So how do you prove the validity and reliability of your questionnaire? Well, basically, the first thing you do is you have to identify which types of validity and reliability tests are applicable to your research. After this slide, we'll look at various different types of validity and reliability. So you have to choose among those types which are applicable to you. Secondly, you have to conduct those tests, the tests that you chose. Usually you do that during your pilot study, and then you gather and give the results of those tests. And if your tests are satisfactory, your tests of validity and reliability are satisfactory, you start distributing the questionnaire or collecting your data. If they're not satisfactory, then you make the changes and do the next iteration of your pilot study, and then check your validity and reliability until you keep doing it until you get good results or satisfactory results for validity and reliability. So quickly, what are the different types of validity? There are many different types. The first one could be kind of grouped into external validity and internal validity. What is external validity? It is basically the ability to be generalized. So if your results, if they were good for your population, and they can also be generalized to India's population, or maybe Sri Lanka's or Afghanistan's or Iran's or Nepal's population, you have external validity. What is internal validity? Internal validity is when your study, it produces a single explanation for the relationship between the variables. In other words, the arrows that you made in your diagram, your research kind of validates, or even if it disproves that arrow, it is one disapproval or one validation. It is not confusing. It doesn't bring results that suggest that the relationship can go both way. It has to be one explanation. So that would be internal validity. Well, this diagram shows many other types of validities, and we'll quickly look at all of them on upcoming slides. The criterion related validity, there are two of them. One is concurrent validity and one is predictive validity. What does concurrent validity mean? It means that if your instrument or questionnaire, if its scores, they are related to another questionnaire that is already proven or already established, then you are concurrently valid. For example, there was a study that was conducted in USA, and it was about people who had some problems in their childhood, and how did they grew up to become good citizens? What were the variables? And you do the same research here, and both the researches, they kind of tally generally given the social and cultural adjustments. So that will be concurrent validity. And the other is predictive validity. What does that mean? It means your research is consistent or valid for something that indicates the future performance of that particular thing that you are measuring. For example, if you are measuring the financial performance of a company, and it says that it performed well for last 5 years, then in the future, if things go the way that they were supposed to go, that company should also be doing good. So obviously you cannot prove predictive validity today other than mathematical analysis like regression, etc. But retrospectively, it can prove whether your research was predictively valid or not. Then the content and construct related validity. The first is face validity. It is very simple. All you have to do is show your questionnaire to an expert who has done this kind of research before, or maybe who is an expert in this knowledge area, and you ask him if my questionnaire looks good. Technically, you would ask him, does the set of questions that I have chosen for a particular construct, do they measure the construct adequately? Is any question out of sync? Should I remove a question? If he or she says your questionnaire is good to go, then you've kind of proved your face validity. Then is item validity. It is again kind of face validity. It can be done through some mathematical tests as well, but the idea is that you are proving the validity of a particular item or a particular question. And when you are doing it for the full set of items or the entire questionnaire, it is called sampling validity. Then is this another type is substantive validity. What does this mean? Well, the extent to which your questionnaire is judged to be reflective of the theory of a construct under study. For example, if you are measuring the emotional well-being of a particular person, that is your construct, and you have 6 questions about it, then it would be substantively valid if the indicators of emotional well-being defined in a particular book or in a particular research are all reflected in your questions or the set of questions under your construct. So substantive validity is kind of validity that is proving the theoretical appropriateness of your measure. Well, then is structural validity. Structural validity basically judges the scoring structure of your instrument. Basically, have we included everything known in literature about the subject and proportionally? So it kind of builds on the previous type of validity that we studied, the substantive validity, and it basically proves that we may have included all the theoretical aspects, but they are proportional as well. So we've not only included them, we've included them proportionally. This is obtained through EFA or exploratory factor analysis. Then there are many other subtypes of comparative validity. I'll quickly go through each of them. The first one is convergent validity, which means that an instrument is highly correlated with instruments measuring similar variables. So if another questionnaire was measuring the same thing that you are measuring, and your questionnaire is correlated to it, or the scores on your questionnaires are correlated to it, you are convergently valid. Divergently valid means that if something was measuring something that is opposite to what you are measuring, and your results are opposite to his results, so you are divergently valid as well. For example, if I am measuring the goodness of driving skills of a person, and another instrument is measuring the number of accidents that were in which a particular person was a part. So we are measuring opposite things. So our results should also be opposite. That is divergent validity. Then is predictive validity. What does that mean? We've already talked about it, but the idea is that your instrument should have high correlation with future criterions. For example, a score of high self-efficacy related to performing a task should predict the likelihood that a participant would complete a task. And the fourth one is discriminant validity. Uh, well, the scores generated from the instrument of interest being slightly but not significantly related to scores from instruments that measure concepts theoretically and empirically related to but not the same as the construct of interest. So it is something between convergent and divergent validity. So basically, the idea is that you are similar to something that is almost similar to you, not exactly similar, but almost similar to you. So your results are almost similar, but not exactly similar to that research. So that is discriminant validity. Then there is outcome validity, which means that the outcome of your research is actually reflecting what is on ground. For example, if the answer to your questionnaire indicates that a particular respondent is very rich, then he or she should have a Mercedes and a big villa as well. So your responses should be reflective of the ground realities as well. Generalizability, we already talked about it. It is the extent to which your results or your findings, they can be generalized to other populations. Now this was validity. Now we'll quickly look at reliability. Reliability has 4 types. There can be many other types, but they would mean the same thing. Because a lot of researchers, a lot of authors, they use different words to show what is actually shown by another author by a different name. So we'll look at all these 4 one by one. The first one is retest reliability. It means test one thing today and test it after another few days when things have not changed, and they should give the same result. This is retest reliability. Then there is parallel forms reliability, which basically means that you can make 2 questionnaires, set of questions, and you administer them to the same group of individuals. And since you made them, you think both are good, they should be bringing similar results. This is parallel forms reliability. Then is inter-rater reliability, which means if 2 respondents, they are kind of similar, they should be giving similar responses to your questionnaire. And finally, internal consistency reliability. It is well, a type of it is what is generally known as Cronbach's alpha. It is the degree to which different test items that probe the same construct, they produce similar results. It can be done in 2 ways. One is average inter-item correlation, and the other is split half reliability. The average inter-item correlation, it's a specific form of internal consistency, and it is obtained by applying the same construct on each item of the test. So what you do is you take all the items that probe the same construct. Basically, if you have 4 items in one construct, you take all of them. Then you determine the correlation coefficient for each pair of items. So item number 1 with 2, 1 with 3, 1 with 4, then 2 with 3, 2 with 4, and then 3 with 4. So all of them pairwise, you determine their correlation, and finally you take the average of all these correlations. This average gives you inter-item correlation. And the second one is split half reliability. It is basically what you do is you split your constructs, the items of your constructs, in 2 halves. The idea is to form 2 set of items for the construct. The entire test, it is administered to a group of individuals, and the total score for each of the 2 sets, each of the 2 halves that you created, it is computed. And finally, how do you determine how do you get this split half reliability? You see the correlation between the 2 halves that you made. If it is high, you have internal consistency. So these were the various types of reliability and validity. Now what we'll do is we'll do our learning extension. We'll go through our course example and do all these steps. So this is our course example. The first thing is I have to decide how many constructs I have. In my case, I had 4 constructs. One was sustaining business, one was financial barriers, one was organismic characteristics, and the fourth one was textile sector subtypes. One thing that I like to emphasize here is that the construct is normally that box in your box and arrows diagram. So every variable is a construct, but not always. In some cases, people they divide their constructs into a single construct into multiple variables. If you haven't done that, then all your the number of your constructs would be equal to your variables, and your variables would be your constructs. But as I said earlier, it is a good time to go back to your conceptual definitions, because they'll tell you if the construct and variable are the same thing for your research. Because our conceptual definition, what we did there was we penned down our idea, our concept behind the variable. So if you think, and the entire concept is being reflected in the variable, that is good enough. That is your construct. But if you think something is lost when you are converting the thought into the variable, then you should extend your constructs, maybe add another variable to reflect your construct entirely. So the second step is you ask yourself how many questions you want to ask for each construct. In my case, for the first construct, sustaining business, I've decided to ask 4 questions. The first one is, my family's monthly financial requirement is, then the respondent gets 5 options. One is less than 50,000. The second option is 50,000 to 100,000. The third option is 100,000 to 200,000. The fourth option is 200 to 300,000. And the fifth option is above 300,000. This is question number 1 of construct number 1. The question number 2 of construct number 2 is, my business is making profit. The options are yes, no. Question number 3, if yes, if question number 2 has been answered as yes, how long has your business been in profit? The respondent has 3 options: less than 6 months, 2 6 months to 1 year, 3 more than 1 year. And question number 4 is, my business profits meet my family's financial requirements. And the options are yes or no. So basically 4 questions for the first construct. Similarly, I'll make questions for the second, third, and fourth construct. I may have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever number of questions I have to ask to ensure that the entire construct will be understood through the answers of the respondent. Now, once I've completed the phrases or the sentences of all my questions, now I'll come over to the structure of my questionnaire. It will have a heading, then an introduction. The introduction says, my name is Abdullah. I'm an engineer or a doctor or whatever, doing my PhD dissertation on the topic of XYZ, whatever your topic is, but do not write your technical topic. Write it in a way which is understandable to the respondent in some simple terms and in understandable terms. So I'm doing my PhD on the topic of XYZ, which aims to sensitize government about the issues being faced by female business women, entrepreneurs, whatever. The idea here is that I want to connect with the respondents in a kind of social or maybe even an emotional way. I'm telling them that the idea of my research is to bring goodness to your business. So in that way, I kind of attract them to answer my questionnaire. The first part was introduction, then purpose. The purpose of this research is to understand the working environment of women who do so and so that we can forward a consolidated set of recommendations to the government and maybe Supreme Court or maybe some regulator like SMEDA or whatever, to provide so and so to female entrepreneurs. So idea again is to connect with them in some way so that they get interested in answering your questions. Then data usage. The data you share will be presented in aggregate terms only. Your name, location, business, or whatever you're asking will never be revealed to so and so, or maybe it will never be revealed to anybody. Then time load. The questionnaire will take 10 to 15 minutes to fill completely. Again, I would like to emphasize that don't make long questionnaires. People, even if they are sensitized about your topic, they may not like to fill very long questionnaires. Then incentives. As a token of thanks, I will share a booklet with all respondents that explains various ways to get government funding for small businesses. Or I will share a list of reliable and low-cost textile suppliers or something like this. So in PhD research, it is not very uncommon. Students, they do make small helping booklets for respondents, which are actually very helpful for them. So respondents are attracted to get that booklet. So as I said earlier, you can, if you cannot do that, you can simply tell them that you'll share your research with them, or maybe you can mention them in your credits. After this section, you insert your complete constructs and questions, which would be 1 to 2 pages, not more than that. Longer questionnaires, again, nobody likes to answer longer questions. And finally, you write a note of thanks to your respondents. Now, once you've completed your questionnaire, you've finalized it, you've proofread it. Some of your friends have proofread it who are good at language, who have done research. So what you'll do is you'll pilot test your questionnaire. Pilot test is testing your questionnaire on a small number of respondents so that you can prove the validity and reliability of your questionnaire. Now, what tests of reliability and validity are applicable to my research? Well, I've decided that I'll conduct face validity, item validity, substantive validity, and outcome validity. Why? Because I want to get experts' endorsement on my research. In reliability, I've decided to do test-retest, inter-rater, and internal consistency reliability. Why? Because out of the 4, I'm not doing EFA, so all 3 that were applicable, I've taken all 3 of them. So the idea is that I want to give an impression to my examiners that I've chosen all possible ways to prove that my research is valid and reliable. So that is all